don't take care of it and we throw our trash in it. We wouldn't do that when we understand the value of that car. And we are so much more valuable, each one of us, no matter what state we're in, no matter how much self-loathing we're filled with, we're more valuable than any $100,000 or $200,000 car. And so to start valuing ourselves at that level, then we start noticing what it is that we're putting into our bodies. And even before that, what it is that we're feeding into our mind, because that's where it all starts. And we start noticing, what emotion am I experiencing right now? What emotions are coming up for me right now that are causing me to want to go toward this thing outside of myself, to numb out whatever emotional pain I'm experiencing. And it doesn't even have to be pain. We've been so indoctrinated in our culture, and this is part of being human too. We use food. Food is a social interaction with other people. We use it as celebration. We use it as comfort. We use it in all kinds of ways. And we've been doing this since the time we were tiny. You know, we got rewarded with M&Ms when we used the potty or whatever. You know, it's been there from the time we were little. And the war probably for a lot of these women started, even pre-teen. But if we can start to recognize what it is that's going on, then we can separate ourselves from the action. We can stop being afraid of those emotions. So when I was in my 30s and taking my steps out of the pit that I was in, I would be feeling all these emotions. And I started to realize I am not my emotion. My emotions are a part of me. They are what make me human. They're an alert system letting me know what's going on in my body, but they don't equal me. And so I can be an observer of those emotions. I don't have to fight them. I don't have to judge them. I can just let them be, but I don't have to be ruled by them either. And I don't have to push them away and make them wrong. I can just let them be. And as I let them be without a big story to tell myself about them, then I can make a decision about what I'm going to do next out of a clear mind, I've given myself some space to be able to process this. And then I can start to make better choices for myself from this space of clarity and self-acceptance and no longer being at war within myself. Because that's how any addiction is. It's a war.
Yeah, definitely. And
so we're making peace within ourselves, and then we can start our way out of that addiction.
And you mentioned a lot of what you've said. Just to agree with you with the statement I had, I always say this whenever I talk about addiction on this podcast. Whereas the guest, she is the deputy director of an institute whereas they help people recovering from addiction, people who addictions in terms of alcohol and drugs. And she said that addiction is a symptom to something, and I really found that very, very interesting because as you said that you had in terms of emotional addiction, whereas you wanted in a way that love, that validation of I'm enough and I want to be loved this way. And sometimes, and also another thing that was very, very crucial that you added was emotional in terms of addiction when it comes to, one thing that I've realized is the fact that men respond when it comes to addiction, men's addictions are different from women. Because when it comes to emotion, women, I would say, how can I put it? Women would rather eat it away in a way when it comes to stress, mostly, especially when it comes to stress within the reason I'm saying this, I have seen it with my colleagues, with my family members in terms of when it came to stress. And as I've said that you really touched on some important things. So within you having tried, as you mentioned, that it's a war, this thing of addiction, it's a war that what people, some people win it, some people lose it, and some people are still fighting it because it's not something easy to get rid of addiction. Because as I mentioned, that it's hard to get out of that comfortable place, and no one would want to go into an uncomfortable place whereas they don't know what is in store for them. What if it is worse than this? Definitely it's worse than this in terms of been trying to have that addiction, not trying to find healing. Speaking about healing, healing is something that as people, some us, I would say, find it difficult to do. And what was happening in your head when you took the step of saying, yeah, I am going to find healing. I'm going to stand up for myself. As you said that those words really you are enough. Were very definitely very, very important to you. And I would say to us all, because we don't, in terms of those kinds of affirmations, I would say that it's quite scarce in terms of hearing those words you are enough. So what was the turning point in terms of saying that now I'm pursuing?
As far as accepting that you are enough.
Yes, definitely.
For me, it was finding peace within myself and not making myself wrong for my lack. And going back to what my friend first said to me years prior to that, you're human. I mean, both of those, you're human and you are enough. There's a very similar message in those words. That there's nothing that I have to measure up to. There's no standard that I have to measure up to in order to just be okay. And I had felt so stuck prior to that, and I didn't see a way out. And I think that's where so many people battling with addiction are, that they're not seeing a way out because they think their addiction is some kind of lack in themselves. And so they're making themselves wrong just for being human. And it was very powerful for me in getting out of the stuck place and just deciding I'm not going to be stuck anymore. I'm going to do whatever it takes to not be stuck. And I love working with these women who are struggling in this way so much, because the path out can really be so much easier and more joyful and more peaceful than they ever would have imagined, because we're coming from a positive place. And that doesn't mean that we're just chanting affirmations like I am enough, I am enough, I am, it's not that. It's really knowing deep down. It's soaking in that enoughness. It's soaking in that humanness and being okay with being human. And one thing that I've found, and I think this is a lot of addiction also, is perfectionism. That if we can't do it perfectly, we think we've failed. And I came from this whole background, that 30 years of my marriage, of my perceived need to be perfect. I was told I needed to be perfect, and I was put under a microscope to make sure I was perfect. And I had my own perfectionistic tendencies too, on top of that. And I think that is a common theme with a lot of the women that I work with, is that perfectionism. And so if we slip up one time in the day, say we have a cookie and we told ourselves we weren't going to have a cookie, then, okay, well, this day is blown, so I might as well, just keep going with this because I've already blown it. That's perfectionism. So breaking through that and seeing that failure is not the end. It's not, we don't have to beat ourselves up. It's like a baby learning how to walk. She takes that first halting step and she falls. And we're cheering for her. We're not saying, oh, what a loser, you fell. Well, you're just learning a new skill. So what does she do? She gets back up and she takes another step, and she falls and gets back up. But it's the getting back up that starts us moving forward, and the forgiving ourselves, not making ourselves wrong for being human. Okay, I'm just learning something new. That's all. That's all I'm doing. And failure is just, every tiny failure is just one step forward toward our success. So after I had that phone conversation with that friend where she told me you're human, I still fell a lot. I still struggled a lot, but I had new hope and I had a new sense of I can do this. And each failure brought me closer to that eventual success of really having victory over this thing once and for all. And so it's the same as food addiction. It's the same thing, but just treating ourselves very lovingly, very kindly, very compassionately, like we would treat a friend, like we would treat someone we cared about. Because I find that we tend to treat ourselves worse than we would treat our worst enemy.
Definitely.
Our self-talk in here can be worse than anything we would ever say to anybody else. And so that self-acceptance is really a major step forward in breaking all these old habits and thought patterns.
And you spoke about affirmations. I believe that affirmations can take you so far. And it takes a lot in terms of, and you spoke about a very important thing, forgiving ourselves. And not in every situation, because I believe as people, we forget that we need to forgive ourselves. Just because we know, we think that we know ourselves, that we don't need to forgive. And I feel like that's the first step of finding healing. That's the first step of recognizing that we need some help. It's the first step of recognizing that what will it take for me? It will take for me to pursue that piece that you spoke about. That thing of realizing that you are enough, you are human, you make mistakes. It's something, and also something that we recognize that we as people, we really need is that self-care. As I've said, that affirmations can take you so far, but practicing those things in a sense of thinking, as you mentioned, that treating ourselves good. And we have a tendency of treating ourselves bad, of having those thoughts. And I believe that you mentioned things of those thoughts of not enough, you will be nothing, in terms of that negative thoughts that you have about yourself. And sometimes it could be something that was said to you back then when you were young, and you're now thinking about it now, that that certain person that said to me, I'm not enough, I am not worth it, things like that. And I feel like that's where as people lose it. That's where as people don't realize that we are more than enough. We are human, as you said, we are human beings. We are just trying to find our ways in terms of asking ourselves this question: what is healing? What does it mean to me? And definitely, as individuals, we have different definition when it comes to what it means to be healing, what it means when they say healing, what it means when they say self-care, because as I said, we're different people. And I'm seeing the time actually, and I'm seeing that we're almost out. But before we leave, I just want to talk about your book. Just can we give us a brief summary what it's about and what kind of solitude that people could use from?
Yes, my book is called Be Free Beyond 50. And it's really that story that I described to you, and how you can take the lessons that I learned and apply them to your life. So how to break free from that shame and guilt and regret that has held you hostage for so long, how to take those steps out that I've really outlined here, and how to learn to connect with yourself and your emotions and thoughts and actions in a healthy way, and how to forgive yourself. So, I left a lot of space for journaling and, gave thought questions after each chapter, because I really want it to be very reflective, to where the person reading it can take the time, give themselves the space to really think about how these lessons apply to their life. So that was my purpose. And just to show everyone who reads it that you are enough, that you have worth in and of yourself, and that You don't have to be stuck. You don't have to squelch your dreams because of your perceived failing. You don't have to give up. You can start to dream